For the next few minutes, I was planning to talk a little about connecting customers and driving efficiency, and looking at how within the DKT and Brown Telecom family, we think of starting with the first meter, and we have a philosophy based on that. But to start with, I thought I'd have a look at some of the bigger picture things, some of the sort of challenges we're all facing at the moment. Including PowerPoint. In the last couple of weeks, the Fibre to the Home Council in Europe published their annual market panorama. And in there, they noted that in Germany, during a pandemic, they added 2.7 million premises to their fibre networks. That's an increase of 66% over everything they've built before in just a single year. And at the same time, the UK added 2 million fibre sockets outside 1.7 million properties. That was an increase of 65% over in a single year, despite a growing level of overbuild that's happening in the UK. So this is all remarkable, huge amount of mobilization of effort. But they also noted that the UK and Germany, together with Italy, represent 60% of all of the premises across Europe without a fibre connection. So whilst there's a huge resurgence of network building going on in the UK and Germany, for example, it's actually just a drop in the ocean, that there is far, far more to do. And it's worth noting who is doing the building, because this has an impact on this. One of the things they noted was that whilst incumbents are taking a bigger part than they have in the past, and that's a very welcome thing, the majority of building is still being done by alternative operators. Now that's quite exciting, actually. It means that with all these new operators, we have more choice. With so many new players, they're building on more fronts. So there's a greater ability to scale, hopefully. And that also means with so many different minds working on this, we've got a much more diverse infrastructure, so hopefully more robust infrastructure in the future. But that also puts increased pressure on scarce resources, not least of which is specialized and experienced labor. And when you look at these operators, it's worth just remembering that an alternative operator, almost by definition, is a new operator, and that these are new businesses that are being asked to scale and mature in massive evolutionary steps, that they'll often go from seed funding and bootstrapping right the way through to maturity and even a possible exit in perhaps 3 or 4 years. Now that might be quite normal or even slow if you're a Silicon Valley startup, but these aren't tech businesses in the traditional sense. These are big, complex civil engineering projects. So scaling at that kind of pace, whilst delivering quality networks with a predictable cost, but often using new and untested processes and systems, is an enormous challenge. I don't think we should ever underestimate the scale of opportunity these guys are having to face up to. So it's perhaps unsurprising that in some quarters now, we're starting to hear that some deployments are slower than planned, that they're perhaps a little over budget. And that in some quarters, we're even now hearing of build quality issues leading to significant network rebuilding in a few places. And that, of course, is just further impacting the cost and delays. And to be honest, sitting behind a lot of this is that lack of experience, that there is a scarcity in, for example, skilled fiber splicing engineers. And what we often hear as a response to this is we need to train more people. And what I'd say to that is upskilling a workforce is always a good thing. And a company like ours, we're perfectly happy to help you with that. But that's a long-term solution to a very immediate problem. And if we're honest, it only actually addresses one aspect of this problem. That scaling a network from a standing start requires much more than just very good people. although you can't do it without them. You also need processes and price, but if too few people are trained to use exactly the same processes as everybody else, using the same techniques, then you're going to end up with very little differentiation other than price in what's becoming an increasingly busy and competitive market. And you'll still be missing your targets. So this needs much more than just, we need to take a step back. We need to have a think about this because as I now understand, Einstein almost certainly didn't say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If we all do the same thing in the same ways, we're all going to look very similar and we're probably still going to end up falling short. So we need to do something that perhaps we've been advised, well, we've certainly been advised over the last year not to do. What I'd say is now is a time that we should start to get closer, closer to our suppliers in particular. And you should definitely be asking them to do more. Expect them to help drive efficiency, help with innovation in your business and drive in integration. So for example, a good systems integrator like Brown Telecom is more than just a supplier. And of course, you should expect them to know their products inside out and backwards. But they should also know how to integrate those individual products into sophisticated solutions. And if they're going to do that well, they mustn't be afraid of interoperability, and they should help you avoid some of those difficult pitfalls like vendor lock-in that once baked into an early business can be so difficult to eradicate as you scale. And in doing that, they should also be innovators in their own right, able to create the elements in the overall solution that make the whole greater than the sum of the parts, that they should be able to provide that magic glue that turns a collection of technologies into a well-oiled and performant system. So if your talent pool is too shallow, a good supply partner will help you widen it. They'll help you simplify the technology and processes so you can employ a much broader range of people that are more readily available to you. And in doing that, they'll also help you use those people to innovate and differentiate so that you stand out from what's becoming quite a busy market. And what does that look like from our perspective? In DKT, we've often been confused that the market talks about customers as the last mile, that I can't think of any other industry that we would say that our customers are the last thing we get to. So we have what we call our first meter philosophy. And it's centered on the customer's experience from the first meter within their home or business. And that means it needs to be its simplicity in service activation and operation, that this is not a complex technology for the sake of technology. It serves a purpose and it serves it in its simplest form. That it's prepared for the future. So as your company grows, you're delivering a physical infrastructure that's going to last maybe decades, that this solution will grow with you. And that some of your other vendor choices may change over that time. So it needs to be open to all other solutions. It needs to be resilient and reliable. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a very practical sense in a second. But overall, it needs to be, all of your solutions need to be minimally disruptive for both you as the operator and for your customers for the lifetime of that service. Now, what does that mean in a much more practical sense? Well, DKT focuses primarily on customer installations and that first meter, first mile piece. So we want to give customers, your customers, much more control over where they have it, how they have it, and how invisible it is to them, to be honest. And during that process, we want to reduce the skills needed for a customer installation to the point where Any local handyman should be able to do an installation. There is no specialist splicing involved. In fact, we're at a point now where if you've got customers comfortable drilling a hole in their wall, then they may well be able to do their own customer installation. Now, in doing that, you can't just, if you've got people that aren't used to keeping clean fiber connectors and all those sorts of things, so you need to be able to check and help them if necessary. So we embed smart testing for reliability and customer assurance. So even if you do get a customer doing their install or a local handyman, you still centrally can do the optical tests and test the performance of that solution remotely. And all those things that you can't, that are scarce skills, we now embed in the network to make it as easy for you as possible. So in summary, what does a good supply partner need to be? Well, they need to be customer-led innovators. The sort of solutions we develop don't just come out of thin air or by being locked away in a laboratory. They come from working very closely with our customers. They need to be integrators of multi-vendor solutions. So this isn't just a point solution that stands alone. You need to be experienced planners and installers that can actually help you with those method statements and all those sorts of things that actually make sure this product works for you. And yes, they'll sell it, but they should also be able to warehouse it and help you with supply chain logistics, taking that away from you as you start to scale your business. It's one less thing to worry about. And with integration, as I've said, needs to come a visceral belief in open access, a refusal for vendor lock-in. And finally, I'd say that your suppliers need to build a degree of customer intimacy, working collaboratively with you and adapting to your very specific local needs. If they can't deliver that, how can they possibly deliver customer-led innovation, for example? And ideally, that partner needs to be one that has a long experience of doing all of this, that even you as a new business can fall back on the experience of your partners. And I thank you for that. Thank you.